Part 6. Restless Waters. The Catalyst of Action and Self-Sovereignty. Chapter 1. The Sudden Quicken and the Unseen Designs. The moment of transition was marked by an absolute physical and sonic shift. The gentle rhythmic consistency that had defined the river's presence in the valley bottom vanished entirely. At a point where ancient granite shoulders squeezed the watercourse into a sudden choke point, the tempo quickens as the river turns, its low enduring percussion instantly replaced by a sharp accelerating violence. The once patient water, compressed and enraged by the immutable resistance of the stone, could no longer maintain its measured decorum. Instead, the water hits the rocks with urgent spray, shattering into thousands of momentary, crystalline declarations of pure, aggressive velocity. This dramatic shift in the river's character was a precise external manifestation of the energy now surging unbidden through Elara's entire being. It was a sudden energy that brightly burns, a fierce, focused, almost reckless enthusiasm that had been lying dormant beneath the necessary layers of quiet resolve and contemplation. This energy was absolute and isolating. It pushes every floating thing away, not just physical debris that might slow its flow, but every single lingering doubt, every soft attachment to comfort, every sentimental memory of the valley's shelter. The river, in its sudden, purposeful fury, mirrored the necessity of a total and uncompromising severance from the past. The omniscient narrator recognized this tumultuous spot as the journey's true kinetic origin. The external music immediately shifted from the philosophical depth of the bass clarinet to a sound of sheer, unbridled force. The driving banjo starts its frantic, sharp attack. This instrument, raw and unforgiving, offered no gentle harmonies, only a percussive, rapid-fire declaration of urgency and chaotic speed. It was a music solely devoted to action, not thought. The mandolin responds with rushing lines, an answering echo of high-pitched metallic speed that combined with the banjo to create a sonic maelstrom of commitment. This music was the pure, unfiltered sound of a decision made and executed without internal debate. Responding to this acoustic surge, the young heart feels it cannot now turn back. The physical reality of the river's accelerated, unstoppable current made any thought of retreat seem not just cowardly, but fundamentally illogical. Elara was now caught in a grander flow, a current pulled by deep unseen designs. These designs were the fundamental gravitational forces of her own unique destiny, the predetermined, high-altitude purpose she had struggled for so long to define, and had now, finally and absolutely embraced. The time for philosophical debate was over. The time for irreversible momentum had arrived. Her life was no longer about choosing, but about being chosen by her own potential. Chapter 2. The Wild Delight of Necessary Overthrow. The rising emotional temperature of the scene was carried by the highest of the strings, providing the necessary contrast to the raw power of the rhythm section. The fiddle scrapes a quick and nervous tune, its high, taut, almost screaming timbre reflecting the profound emotional conflict inherent in such a monumental leap of faith. This music was the perfect emotional mirror, reflecting back the fear and wild delight that battled for dominance within Elara's consciousness. The fear was utterly real, the dread of the immense, unknown heights, and the absolute loneliness of the path, but the delight was exponentially wilder, an intoxicating, liberating joy, born from the release of hesitation and the confrontation with absolute consequence. The passage of time now moved with alarming speed, emphasizing the velocity of her commitment. As morning passes quickly into noon, the slow, measured pace of the early hours, governed by the patient light, dissolved into a blur. The deliberate tempo of the preparation was replaced by the chaotic velocity of action. This quickening of time marked her decisive entry into the critical, non-negotiable phase of her quest, signaling the start of the journey to the highest height, a journey that would demand constant, fierce, unwavering effort until the day's zenith was reached. The river, having found its point of highest kinetic energy, began to literally remake the landscape. The small stream bursts its banks and spreads anew. The concentrated energy could no longer be contained by its old, familiar boundaries. It overflowed violently, seeking new, broader, and more dominant channels. This natural, explosive event served as a powerful, unavoidable symbol for Elara's own condition. The path of safety now is overthrown. The comfortable, well-worn roots of her past life, The predictable course dictated by the restrictive village law were no longer merely unappealing. They were literally submerged, erased by the overwhelming demands of her amplified, uncontained purpose. This crisis forced her final absolute separation from her old cautious self. She must abandon what she thought she knew. The map, the rhythm, the vows, all were now insufficient as active tools. Retaining value only as internal anchors, she was thrust into the terrifying, exhilarating necessity of total improvisation and self-reliance. She had to choose the rougher route. She walks alone. This route, defined by jagged, unforgiving rocks, treacherous scree, and untamed scrub, offered no gentle moss or steady footing. It was the true path of the sovereign explorer, reserved only for the utterly solitary, fully committed soul. Chapter 3. The Ledge of Sovereignty and the Pursuit of Wholeness. The raw, vibrating music and the urgent landscape fused into a single irresistible command that resonated deep in her viscera. The pulse of motion calls her to the edge. This was the definitive psychic boundary, the point where all intellectualizing ceased, and absolute physical commitment became paramount. The intense, unceasing music demanded an immediate somatic response. Tolerating no hesitation lingers in the soul. The time for internal debate was over. The time for the body to obey the will was now. Her vision narrowed, focusing only on the immediate dangerous terrain ahead. She steps beyond the final narrow ledge. This ledge was not merely a stone outcropping. It was the final, indelible, metaphorical barrier between the safety of the known horizontal world and the vertical commitment of the unknown ascent crossing. It was the definitive nonverbal commitment to the quest. She had to choose the rougher route. She walks alone. This route, defined by jagged, unforgiving rocks, treacherous scree, and untamed scrub, offered no gentle moss or steady footing. It was the true path of the sovereign explorer, reserved only for the utterly solitary, fully committed soul. Chapter 3. The Ledge of Sovereignty and the Pursuit of Wholeness. The raw, vibrating music and the urgent landscape fused into a single irresistible command that resonated deep in her viscera. The pulse of motion calls her to the edge. This was the definitive psychic boundary, the point where all intellectualizing ceased, and absolute physical commitment became paramount. The intense, unceasing music demanded an immediate somatic response. Tolerating no hesitation lingers in the soul. The time for internal debate was over. The time for the body to obey the will was now. Her vision narrowed, focusing only on the immediate dangerous terrain ahead. She steps beyond the final narrow ledge. This ledge was not merely a stone outcropping. It was the final, indelible, metaphorical barrier between the safety of the known horizontal world and the vertical commitment of the unknown ascent crossing. It was the definitive nonverbal commitment to the quest. The velocity of her action was profound, driven by, in swift pursuit of making herself whole. The fragmented self composed of the timid dreamer, the meticulous student, and the hesitant daughter was now being violently, exhilaratingly forced into integrated, unified action. The climb itself was the furnace of her becoming, the necessary crucible for her psychological fusion. The driving force propelling her was the triumphant conversion of long-held potential energy into immediate kinetic reality. The restless feeling that had made her stay, the gnawing, profound, internal discontent that had kept her rooted in the valley while she prepared to turn to action, potent and so strong. This powerful directed energy was no longer the cause of her anxiety. It was the absolute instrument of her liberation. She leaves the valley on this vital day, recognizing the day as the pivot point of her entire existence, to find the place where she can truly belong. This place was not a geographical location, but a state of sovereign being, the psychological and spiritual altitude where her immense capability could finally align with her profound, realized purpose. Chapter 4. The Vibrato of Truth and the End of Sanctuary. The intensity of the musical expression reached its absolute fever pitch. The notes blur quickly in a vibrant haze, the banjo, mandolin, and fiddle colliding in a complex, exhilarating, and almost painful rush of sound. This acoustic torrent was a whirl of sound that rushes past the ear, too fast to be logically deciphered, existing only as a pure, intoxicating sensation of speed and forward motion. This was the musical culmination of her irrevocable, total commitment. This vibrant, blurring moment was the definitive, the ending of the sheltered, quiet days. The time of contemplation, the luxury of the mossy cradle, and the soft protection of the valley were over. Permanently closed off by the quickening river and the rising slope, the future promised challenge, exposure, and physical danger demanding her full, relentless moment-to-moment presence. She was leaving the safe space to face the world and banish every fear. Fear was not eliminated by passive calm or intellectual argument, but by the overwhelming, consuming force of absolute, committed action. The blur of the music was the mental process by which fear was simply overwhelmed and rendered irrelevant. Elara took one final necessary glance back at the descending valley, the river now a thin, silver, frantic line, far below, the distant, receding source of her discipline and her eventual freedom. With a final, deep, purposeful breath, she turned her attention entirely to the steep rising slope, matching the banjo's frantic tempo with the relentless, burning effort of her ascent. The true sovereign quest had begun, and she moved upward, propelled by the fierce, urgent rhythm of her own undeniable destiny,